for the University of Idaho, and his focus is on farm and ranch management, production economics, and farm succession. He's earned a master's degree at the University of Idaho, and I would tell you that he lives in Paris. And then you might think France, but it's in the huge metropolis of Paris, Idaho, over in the southeast portion of our state. And so we want to welcome Ben and look forward to hearing about the work he's done in comparing profitability of 4 different ranch management systems. With that, Ben, we'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So just a little background on this presentation. It all came about last fall. I was on a roundup with a guy, and he asked me which type of ranch management system I thought would be the most profitable, the typical cow-calf operation like he had and most people around here have, or a terminal sire program where you run Charolais or Simmental bulls and buy your replacement heifers, or if I'd even considered the new, I guess it's new, people are talking about it more and more nowadays, the strategy of minimizing cow depreciation and capturing heifer and cow appreciation value. And then the 4th one would be sell all those darn cows anyways and run stockers and yearlings instead of running cow-calf operation. So when he asked that question, we started crunching numbers, and we spent the last 4 or 5 months trying to figure out which strategy could be the most profitable with the same set of resources. So that's where this presentation came from, and this is what I'm going to talk about today. It's probably something that I could cover in a couple of hours better, but we'll get the gist of it here, and it looks like these are going to be recorded. So if you need to rewatch it to catch up on some of the numbers that we're going to breeze through, you have that opportunity later. All right, so just a heads up before we start crunching the numbers that in order to make these comparisons between the different systems, we're going to count every cost there is. So that includes cash costs, non-cash costs like depreciation on equipment and machinery and cattle, and maybe even labor if you don't pay yourself. And then we're going to include the 3rd cost category is opportunity costs. And that is the value of the opportunity that you didn't take by putting your resources into a cow-calf operation. So for example, the hay that you could have sold, you raised it for $100 a ton, but you could have sold it for $130. We're going to count the $130 of value for the hay. Same with your labor. You might say, I never pay myself. Well, we're going to pay you and count that as a cost. So don't get hung up on the negative numbers as we go through there. This is not the point to see how profitable these operations are. It's to see which is the most profitable. So keep in mind, we're counting every cost, and these numbers are a little bit negative, but the point is still going to be made. So the way we have it set up is we're going to do a 1X ranch as the typical cow-calf. The 2X ranch will be a terminal sire ranch. The 3X will be the one where we're capturing the cow value, and the 4X ranch will be the stocker steers. So we're going to try to keep them separated that way. And I'll go through and give a little bit of background. We'll talk about these changes that will have to be made based on this base ranch as the typical cow-calf operation where we're going to be raising our own replacement heifers. So this is a typical operation for our area. We're going to calve in February. Starting mid-February through April, we'll run on federal and state range through May and through September. And then, that range is going to be about a 2/3, 1/3 split, 2/3 federal, 1/3 state range. And then they'll be on some type of private pasture or crop aftermath in October and November when hay feeding starts typically around the 1st of December, and we'll continue that through the month of April. And I did mention that we're going to raise our own replacement heifers for this system. So the base ranch has 250 mother cows and 43 heifers that we retain each year, 43 heifer calves, 10 bulls on the operation and 4 horses. It's kind of bare bones. I'll talk about some of the other investments here in a second, but we'll just have a simple 90% calf crop weaning rate. Our cull cow rate is about 14%, and our death loss on those cows is about 1%. That's a little bit low in my estimation, but it's what the producers that I worked with said, so we kept it at that. We cull about 12% of those 43 heifers, so that leaves us with about 38 heifers to add to the herd as replacements each year. And we're going to wean 550-pound calves and steer calves and 525-pound heifer calves. A little bit more on the base ranch. We have, with those cows and heifers and bulls and horses, we have about $414,000 invested in animals. And that's a pretty good chunk of change. We also have about $132,000 invested in buildings and corrals and things like that, improvements on the land, fencing, and then about $89,000 invested in machinery and equipment. We don't drive new pickups on this ranch. We don't have new tractors. It's used equipment that gets us by, but it is not fancy. These are important because we're going to take into account the cost incurred by these fixed investments. So now we're going to break these numbers down, and I'll try to go through it slow, but you can see that we have the different classes of cattle that we're going to sell: steer calves, heifer calves, cull cows, cull bulls, and replacements. And then a column for how much these are going to weigh when we sell them, and how many we're going to sell, how many head. And then a cost. It looks like according to Dennis's talk, I should have dropped the price on those heifers another 5 cents with the heifer slide. I think he said 16 cents from steer prices. We have it 10 under, and you can see that we're holding some of those heifers back. That's why the number of heifer calves sold is less. We're holding 43 of those back to try to breed. Anyway, our gross returns for that 250 cow operation is about $189,000. And you divide that number, that 189, by 250 mother cows, and that's about $756 per mother cow that we're bringing in. Some of that income comes from culls, and most of it's from calves. And it's important to remember, I think, that usually on most cow-calf operations, about 20% of your income comes from cull cow and cull bull sales, cull heifer sales. Okay, now looking at the operating costs. These are the variable costs or direct costs that sometimes people call them. Don't get hung up on all the numbers. That we'll focus on some and not worry about the others, but it shows how much hay we're going to be feeding for this operation and what our hay is valued at as far as pasture and grazing. That's all here. We have the number of AUMs we're going to need, the cost per AUM. We have vet expenses, freight, commission, hired labor. And you might look at that and say to yourself, well, we don't pay our hired labor that much. And this is not a per hourly rate. This is per hourly cost plus the benefits and the taxes that you have to pay. Owner labor, we have you at 27, and you might say you're not worth that much, but I think if you did a little bit of math and crunch some of those non-cash benefits you receive from the ranch, you're probably worth more than that. And then these other repairs and fuel costs that come along with the ranch, and then interest on our operating capital. Even if you finance your operation with your own capital, you should still charge some type of interest on your own, using your own money. We assume that we're going to be borrowing some of this money to operate on, so we use a 7% interest rate, which might be typical for an operating loan. I do want to point out one thing on this slide with the 1X ranch. We're developing our own heifers, and normally I would recommend that you have a heifer enterprise budget and a cow-calf enterprise budget, and you keep them separate. But it's all in one on this example. And that's because most people keep their heifers and run them with their cows, and it's hard to split out. So we kept it together. So not only is the heifer not sold in this budget, but her feed costs are included. So it comes out to be about $1,500 to produce a heifer, and it's all included in these costs. Okay, as far as fixed costs or ownership costs go, here they are. We have bulls. We're going to need to be buying about 3 bulls per year in order to keep our bull inventory up. Somebody yesterday, I had a guy review this, and he said my horses are valued at too little, and this is actually not the horse value. I had them valued at 2,500, and then this is irrelevant for the objectives of this presentation, but I upped it to 5,000 before he looked at it, and this is only horse depreciation. What it says is, if you don't save that much money each year, you're going to end up digging up a $5,000 check one day to buy a new horse. So you save that money so that you can replace the horses as they are worn out. Same with buildings and improvements in machinery. This is not the cost of the machinery or buildings, it's the depreciation. If you don't use that money, you're not going to ever upgrade if you don't expense that. And then this big line down here is the opportunity interest on your breeding livestock. It's actually, I did include your horses in there too, but this is a line that most people don't include on their budgets. And that is because it's a non-cash cost. But like I said earlier, we have over $400,000 invested in this business. We ought to be able to get a return on that. So I put it that we need a 4% return, and we could probably put it at 6 or 7 or 8% if we wanted to be harder on ourselves. And that ends up being about $16,500 on our interest on breeding livestock that we should be counting, whether we pay it or not. We end up with total ownership costs on this line here, total costs here, and your net returns above total costs, or sometimes we call this your gross margin of minus $224 per head. And you might be saying to yourself, that is a bad business model. We shouldn't be going this route. But keep in mind, it's because we're including all of our all of our opportunity costs for labor, land, everything is included here. And so that's why it looks negative. Don't get hung up on the negative number. So why is the 1X still in business? How can that ranch stay sustainable? And it is because, like I said, those opportunity costs are not actually paid. And those are significant. We have about $49,000 in labor that we may or may not be paying ourselves as a wage. About $35,000 in land if you include pasture, and say about $30 per ton of hay that we feed for land rent, which is pretty typical. That ends up being about $35,000 that we're not writing a check for, as well as that $16,000 or $17,000 on livestock investment. And then all those other things that we don't write a check out for, capital recovery, which is just depreciation and interest expenses. That's for buildings, machinery, equipment. If we're not accounting for that or using that money to replace and upgrade our equipment, eventually we end up like a lot of cow-calf operations with everything that's worn out, and all your equipment's barely getting by, and your repair bills are sky high. Total non-cash expenses are about 146, almost 147,000 for that base 1X ranch. If we add those back in, you can see how a normal ranch would stay profitable, or stay in business, I guess I should say. So what should they do? What should a typical ranch do to improve profitability? Well, there's only a few things you can do. One is to improve that gross margin, or I called it the net returns above operating costs. And you can do 2 things. You can increase your revenue or decrease operating costs. And a lot of times we spend most of our time on those 2 things, trying to figure out how to save money on feed, trying to figure out how to get a better price for our calves. And that's one of the main things we can do to increase our profit. Second thing is to lower those fixed or ownership costs. Not something that we typically think of, especially on a cow-calf operation, where a lot of times we're bare bones anyways, as far as our fixed costs go. And the third thing we sometimes think of is, well, we just need more cows. We need to expand and rent more ground and buy more cows. And I wish you were here in person. I'd ask the question, will that really make us more profitable with this scenario? And the truth is we can expand and we'll lose more money with this scenario. So that may or may not be the solution or part of the solution for your operation. Let's see. There's a rule, Danny Kleinfelter, who's a Texas A&M extension guy. He's retired now, but he had the 5% rule. He called it, if we increase the price we receive by 5% and decrease our cost by 5% and increase our yields by 5%, a lot of times that'll bring about close to double our net returns, or 100% increase in our net returns. It won't quite do it for this operation, but it'll get us pretty darn close. And that's what we usually focus on, is whittling away at costs, trying to increase our revenues a little bit, increasing our weights on our calves. And that'll do it, but it won't quite get us in the black. So we can make lots of small changes, or we can try to find a big breakthrough, something that changes our operation completely, that might get us where we want to be in a more profitable situation. So those three strategies that we're going to look at, varying from the base operation, are using terminal sires, capturing cow appreciation, and then running stocker steers. So we're going to use the same exact resources. We're not going to rent any more ground. We're not going to, well, we'll buy a little bit of hay if we need to. That's not a big deal. But we're not going to rent any more ground for our base ranch in order to make these scenarios work. That way we can compare them. So the 2X ranch is running terminal bulls. Let's look at the numbers on this. The changes we're going to have to make compared to the base ranch is we're going to run Charolais or Simmental bulls. We're going to sell 100% of the calves that we wean, and we're going to buy our replacement heifers in this situation. I increased the weaning weights on the calves across the board by 50 pounds for heifers and steers, and probably could increase them more, but we're still running heifers, and we're going to have heifers that are not terminal cross calves probably, so they're going to pull down our weights. But we're going to be able to run 25 more cows by not running heifers. And this is kind of the important part with this strategy. If you think about the cost to produce a heifer, it's about $800 per heifer that you purchase or that you don't sell, plus another $700 of feed and breeding and other inputs, labor, to get her to the point where she's going to calve. That makes her worth about $1,500, which is about the same price you can go buy a heifer for nowadays, a bred heifer. But then there's the added cost that we don't normally think about, and it's the cost of not running a cow that produces cash flow in her place. And if you break it out for those 43 heifer calves that we run on that base ranch, we can replace those 43 heifer calves on the same amount of feed as we can run 25 cows who are bringing in cash. It just happens to be about $465 per heifer of cash if you break it out by those 43 heifers. So that makes our heifers, if we include that, worth about $1,965 a head if we include that lost income from cow cash flow that we're not getting. So the real question is, should we raise or buy our replacement heifers? And we have a replacement heifer budget. You can crunch those numbers another time on your own and make that decision, but that kind of is the question for this scenario. I think I just mentioned that. Heifer's cost is the value of an unsold calf plus her development cost plus the opportunity calf of not running cows in the heifer's place. So this ranch, the 2X ranch, is going to have 275 mother cows, no heifers to run, 11 bulls. We need one more bull. We'll keep the same number of horses, same calf crop of 90%, still same cull rates and death losses on our cows, but we're going to have 50-pound bigger calves. Steer calves and heifer calves will be 600 and 575 pounds. So here are the numbers that change versus the base ranch. Our steer calves are now higher, anything in green is up, and anything in pink or red is down in value. So our steer calves are going to be bigger, heifer calves will be 50 pounds bigger, and our bulls will be bigger. We're running meat wagon bulls instead of the normal 1,800 pound bulls. Actually, probably going to be higher than that, but we'll keep them at 2,000. We're going to sell more steer calves. We're going to sell all of our heifer calves. So those two numbers increase quite a bit, not only because we have more cows, but we are not retaining any heifers. But we're not selling any cull heifers either with this program. We're going to also sell a few more culls just because we have more cows. And then our steer calf prices decreased by a nickel, and our heifer prices by a nickel because those calves are bigger. As far as operating costs that change, we don't buy alfalfa hay anymore because we don't have heifer calves to feed alfalfa to. So that saves us some money, but we do have to buy more grass hay or raise more grass hay and a little bit of protein supplement for those cows. We feed a little bit of protein the last 60 days of the pregnancy, or 30 days, I guess you could say, of the pregnancy and 30 days after calving before they go out to grass. Brown inspections go up a little bit because we're selling a few more head. And then hired labor, I dropped 250 hours. That may actually drop more, but we dropped it a little bit because we're not calving out heifers anymore. No, we're not running heifers anymore. So we also have to remember on the fixed costs, we have to purchase all those heifers. The costs in the operating budget that we just barely went over didn't include feed for heifers. And the revenues did include selling those heifer calves. So we have to purchase 42 head of heifers in order to keep our replacements up. And that's about $63,000 we have to dig up each year. Okay, so the pros of the 2X ranches, well, we get around 5 more cows. We don't have to mess with replacement heifers. We don't have to mess with heifer bulls. We get to sell bigger calves, and we don't have to spend so much time calving cows. The cons are, well, for this option, we could be buying mother cows, bred cows, rather than bred heifers, which might save the labor, I guess, the point I made here. Well, the cons are, well, we have to buy 42 bred cows or heifers each year, and they're not going to be our heifers. Sometimes that's a hang up. People like the heifers that are grown on their place, that know the territory, that are adapted to your feed and your management system. So that can or be a downfall, or may not, depending on what source you have available to purchase heifers from. So what we're doing really is trading 43 heifers that don't bring in cash flow for 25 cows that do bring in cash flow. It ends up being, if you add in cull income, about $925 per head. Okay, so that's the second operation. Now let's look at the 3X ranch, where we're trying to capture cow appreciation. It seems like, maybe I have not noticed it, but it just seems like to me in the last 2 or 3 years, this has become a big deal, and a lot of people are talking about it in magazines, and you hear it in articles all the time, read it in articles, where minimizing cow depreciation is what we should all be doing, yet I still don't know anybody who does it. I do know people who run Charolais and Simmental bulls all the time and do the 2X ranch strategy, but I don't know anybody who sells all their cows when they hit 5 years old. So this one, it took a lot of time to crunch these numbers and get this system right, but I think we've got it figured out that it can work, and we'll go through kind of the reasoning here. The changes for this ranch versus the base ranch is, number one, our goal is not really to minimize cow depreciation. If we wanted to do that, we could run Coriani cows and not have any depreciation, or hardly. Our goal is to really capture and add depreciation to our females. So what we're going to do in this strategy is retain 100% of our heifer calves. And we're going to keep the ones that we need for our operation, sell a few extra bred ones that we don't need, and then we'll sell some open ones that don't breed as well. try to add a little bit of value to them. So what it's going to let us do is run 52 more heifers. We're going to need to do this in order to have enough replacements. But in order to run 52 plus the base of 43, running 95 extra heifers, we're going to have to cut our mother cow numbers by 40 head in order to use the same grass, the same amount of feed. And we're going to end up selling, in this example, we're going to sell all of our cows after they wean their 4th calf. So they will be 5.5 years old. We're not going to keep anything past that age. We'll sell some bred heifers. And this makes, if you think about it, we're only keeping 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th calf animals. But some of them are going to fall out along the way. Instead of just 25% of our herd is going to be 1st calf heifers, it's going to end up being about 32 or 33% of our herd being 1st calf heifers. And that changes the whole thing. But that's what's going to be necessary to make this work. Our calves we're going to wean, we're going to drop the weights on the calves in this example because, well, 1/3 of our herd is 1st calf heifers. We could still run terminal bulls on the other 2/3 of the cows, and that would up those weights a little bit, but we kept it just with typical English breed bulls. And we're going to need more labor because we're going to be calving quite a few more heifers. So those are the changes. The real question is, can you market, or do you have a good market for bred animals? And then how does this affect your net worth? And I'll go through an example here in just a minute. So here's our base operation, or our 3X operation. Now we've got it adjusted down from 250 cows to 200 cows and up from 43 heifers to 95 heifers. We're going to need more bulls, 14 bulls now. We'll keep the same horses. We'll still have a 90% calf crop, and we're still going to have to cull some animals. Whether we add value to those culls or not, we're going to have some. What it basically is, not 100%, but a lot of it is going to be from late bred 2nd calf heifers. That's always a challenge. If all those 7% of cull cows came in that category of 2nd calf heifers, that'd be 1 out of 5 of them don't rebreed on time to keep for our herd. They'll still rebreed, and we'll sell them as late bred heifers to capture some of that value. Still have a 1% death loss on our cows, and our calves are going to now weigh 425 pounds for steers and 500 pounds for heifers versus 550 and 525. And then the whole difference comes in this, and it's going to be a little bit more work, but we're going to capture the appreciation or minimize depreciation on 44 bred cows that are going to be 5 years old that we'll sell. 15 bred heifers that we don't need as replacements for our herd, we'll sell them. And then 15 late bred heifers, those are these 22% that will fall out of the herd. Hopefully we can get them rebred and they'll be fall calving or summer calving cows. And then we'll still have about 11 cull, probably open heifers that didn't rebreed, or they might have other problems that we're going to cull them for. And we can still add value to them. We don't have to just sell them for minimum prices. Here's a breakdown of a typical cow herd. This comes from Nebraska, and it's pretty accurate, I think, if you look at your cow herd. About 50% of the cow herd, a normal cow herd, is 4 to 5 years old. That's in this category here. And if you stack those bars up, it's pretty accurate. So we're going to use this as one of our assumptions in this enterprise. And then here's a line that represents bred cow value and depreciation. H1 would be a heifer, a yearling heifer that hasn't been bred, where it's just getting bred. H2 would be a 1st calf heifer, so a 2-year-old. And then you go from cows all the way down 3-year-olds down to 10-year-olds. It can keep going, but the value of a H1 is usually around $800, pretty close to the same value of a cull cow when she's old. A peak value would be at a 1st calf heifer of $1,500 we'll use in this example. And then they drop off maybe $100 to $1,400 as a second calf heifer and a third calf heifer, they're still pretty flat. They might drop another $100 by the time they're 5 years old. We'll value them at $1,300 for this example. And this is when we're going to sell those bred cows at 5 years old. And $1,300 a head is what we use for a price. These prices I'm not just pulling out of thin air. This is CattleFax data on bred heifers. You can see the blue line was 2019 and the black line is 2020. The dashed red line is the seasonal price index. You can see how bred heifer prices vary throughout the year. We're going to go with just a $1,500 bred heifer. Bred cow prices have the same pattern, and CattleFax had them at $1,500, and I just couldn't believe it. So I dropped the value of 5-year-old cows down to $1,300. It may or may not be accurate, but it's probably pretty close. Just looking at equity, how in the world does this system change your equity in your cow herd? If you break it down for the base ranch of 250 cows and 38 heifers, you can see how we're valuing these $800 calf, $1,500 first calf heifers, and then the value drops off as those cows get down to the 7 to 13 year range. Your value of your females is about $35,000 or $344,000 for females. In the 3X herd, where we only have 210 cows and 95 heifers, and we're trying to capture that depreciation, our equity in that cow herd is at prices today, similar to today, is about $373,000, about $30,000 more than our base operation. Now, this can change drastically when female prices start to go up in the next 2 or 3 years, but this is kind of what it is today. So you've got more investment, more equity. How does this 3X ranch affect our gross returns? Well, now instead of just steers and heifers and cull cows and cull bulls, we have bred cows, bred heifers, and late second calf heifers that we're going to sell. We got to drop the weight on those calves because a third of our cows are now first calf heifers. And we're going to adjust the number of those calves sold because we're only running 210 mother cows. We're not selling any heifer calves. We're retaining all of them. We're going to sell 44 bred 5-year-old cows, 15 bred heifers, and then about 15 second calf late calving heifers. We increase the price on those steer calves because they're going to be a little bit smaller, increase that price up a nickel. And you can see the price that we'll sell. Estimate that we can sell bred cows for bred heifers and late calf, second calf heifers. That increases our gross returns to almost $200,000 for this operation. As far as costs, operating costs, we're going to need to increase our alfalfa hay fed because we're running twice as many heifers, more than twice as many heifers. We'll also need to decrease our hay for our cows and protein supplement. And then I also increased our hired labor by 250 hours just because we're going to be calving so many more heifers with this example. And we'll need to buy 1 extra bull as far as ownership costs go. And that's the only changes for the 3X ranch. So some of the pros for this type of operation, number one is we really are minimizing cow depreciation. If you're depreciating all your animals on the 1X ranch, the base, it'd be about $33,000 of depreciation each year. On the 2X ranch, where we have more mother cows and less heifers, that's about $36,000 in depreciation each year. Excuse me. And on the 3X ranch with these, where we're trying to capture appreciation, we only have $13,000 of depreciation each year, and $9,000 of that is just from bulls. So we have about $4,000 versus $33,000 and $36,000 of female depreciation. So it worked. We captured it. There's probably even good ways to capture that bull depreciation and avoid that altogether too. That's for a different presentation. We do have more cow equity, and we did depreciate less, but profitability really does depend on how good we are at developing heifers and what our costs are. And that should be a different enterprise budget you should run on your own at a different time probably before you jump into this strategy. And it really does depend on what price or what stage of the price cycle we're in. This one will be profitable on certain stages and extremely unprofitable on other stages of the price cycle. And we'll discuss that here in a minute. Some of the cons with this strategy are, number one, well, you have 95 head of heifers to run. So that means a third of our cow herd is first calf heifers, whether we like calving heifers or not. It's a downside, I think. You might not have enough good heifers in your herd to replace what you need each year. You might end up selling your heifers and buying some better quality ones to keep your quality up. And that might have to happen. Getting heifers to rebreed is going to be a challenge. It's always a major challenge for every ranch, I think, to get those second calf heifers to rebreed on time. And it'll be a major challenge with this one because you've got so many more of them. And I don't know if we accounted for that fully in this example, but we tried. That will definitely be an expensive challenge. It'll take more labor and your calves will be a little bit smaller. This example was given with raising our own heifers, but it may actually work better if we buy our heifers and run and don't run heifers. It depends on your cost of production for heifers. All right, so that's the third example. Let's look at the final one is selling all cows and running stocker steers. This is one that I've contemplated a lot where I'm at. We are at 6,000 feet elevation. Most people feed their cows for at least 6 months of the year, hay. And so it's expensive. And people, we always say we're idiots for running cows here, calving in the snow. We should just sell and buy calves in the summer and forget all that extra work. So I was really interested in crunching these numbers just because of my own area that we're in. So what we have to do is sell all those cows, and we're going to have to be calf buyers in the spring. And the question is, how much do we love those cows? Are we able to sell them? A lot of people probably will have a hard time getting rid of them. How many can we run is the second question. If we're running 250 cows on the base ranch and 43 heifers, how many yearling steers can we run? Let's break that out. If we have 250 cows and they weigh 1,200 pounds, I think we had them 1,300 pounds actually on our coal line. Well, let's just say 12. 225 calves that they're nursing at 300 pounds average while they're on grass, plus 43 heifers average 750 pounds while they're on grass, and 10 bulls. That's 418,000 pounds of animals eating grass. So we can divide that by 750 pound steers. Say we buy them at 600 pounds, sell them at 875. They're on hay for the first month, so they're actually averaging about 730, 740 pounds on grass, but we'll use 750. That'll give us enough grass for 557 steers, and we'll just round it to 550 for the example. So we're replacing cows for steers at 550 head. In this example, we'll buy these calves in March at 600 pounds, feed them hay for the month of March, alfalfa hay, try to keep them growing good. And then they'll go on federal, state range, private pasture, and crop aftermath. For the rest of the summer, we'll sell them in September at approximately 875 pounds. And in this example, we'll leave the fixed cost the same as a cow-calf ranch. Although we probably don't need a calving barn, we probably barely need corrals, we probably don't need a tractor. A lot of things could change, but we'll keep them the same. That's why they call them fixed costs. We don't change them a lot. Okay, so, well, what are we going to buy these calves at and what should we sell them at is the third question. And just going off of cattle facts data, hopefully you can see this on your screen a little bit better than I can. But in March, that average price for the last 2 years in 2019 and 2020 was about 170 for those 600-pound calves. So we'll buy them at that price. What price should we sell them at? In September-ish, the price for the last couple of years was about 135. So we'll sell them at 135. So here's our gross returns end up being about $642,000 worth of animals. We're going to have some death loss at about 1%. So we'll sell 544 of those 550 steers at 875 pounds. We're going to bring in about $643,000. But we have a bunch of expenses too. We have a little bit of hay. Well, first of all, we have calves. 561,000 we're going to be spending on those calves. We're going to need some hay for a month. We kept the federal state grazing all the same because it's the same grass we're going to be eating. Whether or not you can get the federal land agencies and the state to let you run yearlings is a whole nother question. We'll assume that they'll let you. And then labor decreased quite a bit because we're not feeding animals through the winter. It basically gives you 1 day per week to run these calves for about 7 months. That may be accurate. Maybe you spend more time with them. I don't know, but that's probably close to where it should be. And then we leave the fixed costs the same. I'm not going to change those. The only thing we don't have is this opportunity interest on breeding livestock because we don't have breeding livestock. So with this strategy, the pros are, well, we don't have to run cows. And in an area like mine, that would be nice if we could still maintain some sort of profit. We have less production risk because we're not calving cows in 40 below weather with 3 feet of snow. We're not doing all this with calves and cows that is difficult. We're just buying steers when the weather's decent, selling them before it gets bad. We do have less labor, which might be a huge pro. We're going to need to focus more on marketing. If you're good at that, that might be a pro. If you're not good at that, we can put that in the con category. And with this strategy of run stockers, maybe the sell-buy strategy that gets talked about a lot would be the way to go. And you can research that on your own. But that would probably be the way to go on this operation. So we're going to run yearlings. Price risk is going to be greater because we have a lot more animals. And we're selling every single one of them. So we're going to need some sort of system to manage price risk, whether we contract them in advance or hedge them or use the new livestock risk protection program insurance, which is basically the exact same thing as hedging. We should probably have some sort of price risk management strategy. And the other con is it takes a lot of capital. You're going to need some financing to buy that many calves, $500,000 worth of financing probably. So side-by-side comparison. We got the 1X ranch, the base, the 2X ranch with terminables, the 3X with capturing cow depreciation, and the 4X of running stockers. And you can see here the gross returns from each operation. If you just looked at that number, you'd say to yourself, well, heck, we'll just run yearlings. That's by far the most profitable. That's not true. We've got to subtract our operating costs, feed and labor and others. And what we end up with is our gross margin or net returns above operating costs. Normally, I would say that's as far as you need to go, and it'll tell you which scenario is the most profitable. But it won't in this situation, and especially with 2X, because we still have to buy a whole bunch of replacement heifers. So we've got to continue on with our ownership costs here on this line. You can see that by the time we add those in, this 2X ranch has way more, double the ownership costs because we have to buy heifers in this system. And our total costs for each ranch are here. Subtract the total cost from the gross returns, and we'll end up with our net returns per operation. No, don't get hung up on the negative numbers. Remember, it includes every single opportunity cost. We value every asset of what its real worth is. So we'll just bring those to a base of 0. Let's say that this typical ranch, the profit is 0. The 2X ranch ends up being with the terminal bulls ends up being about $7,000 or $8,000 more profitable than the base ranch. Capturing cow depreciation is actually slightly less profitable than the base ranch. And you might ask yourself, well, how come everybody's talking about that right now and it's not profitable? Well, it really is, because you're running a third of your herd as first calf heifers, and those calves are lighter. And that's what's getting you down. It might work in a different situation. If you tweak the numbers or tweak the system a little bit, it might be more profitable, but with our assumptions, it wasn't. And then as far as running those steers, yeah, you've got a lot less labor, a lot more risk, and your profitability actually is the lowest in this example. But if we are able to be better marketers and we add 5 cents to the selling price of those steers, that number switches from $9,000 to $13,000, almost $14,000, and ends up being the most profitable operation. So I think we can learn a lot from this table. Each system can be profitable with a few adjustments to the gap is not so wide that there can't be a change made to make each system profitable. But, and this is kind of an eye-opener for me, the plain old cow-calf operation might be just perfectly fine. And that just kind of tells me that, you know what, the ranchers that are in business right now are smart. They're smarter than college professors and consultants. They do it for a living, and their motivation is to stay in business and to be profitable. And they figured out the smartest way to do things. So, you know, this scenario, running a typical cow-calf operation might be best for you. Another thing to think about might be that depending on which stage of the price cycle we're in could change our decisions completely. You might ask yourself, in addition, which system has the most risk? Which one is the easiest to run and requires the least amount of labor? Which one is the simplest? And those also might influence your decision. It's not going to be just these numbers on the bottom when they're that close that influences your decision. We're apparently, most people think we have bottomed out on the price cycle, and this 2020, depending on how crazy politics and COVID gets, we should be bottoming out and heading back up on the price cycle. And this will affect the profitability of each of those scenarios. So I encourage you to take some time and analyze that in your head and see, you know, that 3X ranch of capturing depreciation will definitely work best when we're going up. It definitely won't work very well when we're going down. And maybe a combination of each strategy.
We just need a crystal ball then.
Yeah. And maybe a combination of each strategy would be best. Some things to consider. Every ranch has a different set of resources, land, labor. Every rancher has a different set of skills. Some are good marketers. I think the previous talk pointed that out, that marketing is a lot of times the last thing we do. We're excellent producers and not such good marketers. If you're a good marketer, there's going to be more opportunity with certain scenarios. The third thing I want to mention is that, you know, this is my life. My occupation is developing budgets. And I've been doing it probably since before Excel was invented. I started doing this on our dairy farm when I wasn't even a teenager yet. And I've never had one budget come out right. So they're wrong. We assume things, we make our best guesses, but budgets are not always right. And assumptions are just assumptions. So last thing to think about is, would a combination of one of these scenarios be better? What if we ran replacement heifers, bred replacement heifers instead of stocker steers in added value? That'd be a combination of capturing appreciation of females, like through the 3X ranch, and a combination of the 4X ranch. There's several different combinations you can go through that might be profitable. You might gain some synergy. So just to wrap up, 2 quotes that I think are important for any business owner to keep in mind. One is from Darwin. He says, "It's not the strongest of the species that survives. nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that is most adaptable to change. And we're lucky in the cow-calf business, I think, because the calf price cycle is probably the most predictable cycle on earth. It really does work. And if we can take advantage of those opportunities and be adaptable, we can be more profitable. Everybody can be profitable on the top of the price cycle. It takes some adaptability to be profitable on the bottom of the price cycle. And then the last one is a quote from Einstein, which I saw in an office building a year ago, and I've been thinking about it and how to apply it to my own business every single day. Everything should be made as simple as possible. That is a really good management strategy, I think. I still don't know what the but not simpler part means, but I do believe that a simple management system is the best. We can make things so complicated that we get out of control and we can't manage. And lastly, if you have questions or want copies of these Excel spreadsheets to crunch your own numbers, just shoot me an email or give me a phone call, and I'd be happy to send them to you so you can tweak them for your own operation if you have any needs later on.
We do have a question that just popped up. If buying replacement heifers is the most profitable, oops, disappeared on me. How do the people raising the replacements to sell stay in business?
Well, they've got an edge, right? They've got some sort of advantage, a competitive advantage for raising them cheaper than you do. And you can think about it. If we're raising 40 head of replacement heifers and somebody's raising 400 head, they've got some economies of scale, and they should be able to do things a little bit more efficiently than small scale operations should.
And I think that goes right back to your point to ponder that, you know, every ranch has some different resources, and every rancher, every producer has, you know, a little bit different set of skills. And so maybe I think that plays into that whole deal of each one of those things could, you know, maybe there's the advantage one direction over something different.
Yes, good point. Anything else, Scott?
That is all I see in the chat, and we're a little bit over time, but I think you've given us some great things to think about there, Ben. Especially, I always think it's good, no matter what, to be able to go and look at what we're doing. Maybe it is the best, you know, we're doing the best we possibly could in our personal situation, but sometimes if we just look out around us a little bit or crunch some numbers from time to time, we might find that there are opportunities there that we potentially ought to take advantage of.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And if we're not paying attention, we'll miss them.
Exactly. So, well, thank you, Ben. That is some really interesting information, an interesting comparison with those various operating scenarios. And anyway, you saw Ben's contact information. It's in the proceedings, and if you have some more thoughts or questions about that, feel free to give him a call. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and take a break. Come back in, let's see, so we'll take 10 minutes. So I would say come back at 11:25. We'll get started again. And in the meantime, I'm gonna put up one of the Life on the Range videos for those that just would like to see it. So we'll see you back here at 11:25.